You're growing year round, is that right?
That's correct.
All of these automated range coops are equipped with thermostatic climate control. 14 times 6,000, so that's how many birds are here on this farm. Everywhere that we raise chicken, we want to be raising cattle as well.
Are you guys hooking up tractors to pull this thing? Are you getting out and pushing it by hand?
The coop actually moves itself.
So really what this is we took the conventional stationary house and we basically just took the floor out and put it on wheels.
This is how we control the entire coop.
The biggest pastured poultry schooner I think I've ever seen, probably that ever exists. Hey everybody, welcome to Heifer USA. In this video, we're going to take you on a tour of Pasturebird's research farm in Butler, Georgia. The sheer size, scale, and audacity of this farm is unlike anything I've ever seen, and I can't wait to give you a behind-the-scenes look at what is probably the largest pastured poultry operation in North America. So join me as Paul Greive and Dan Coady from Pasturebird give us that behind-the-scenes look and take us on a up-close and personal tour of their operation. Check it out.
In my world, coming up in grassroots, backyard agriculture, we had this whole thing that was kind of pushed on us that anything conventional is inherently bad. And we almost believed that for a little bit until we started thinking about, well, what even is traditional ag or conventional ag? All it is a response to a request, right? So people asked for cost-effective chicken. What traditional and conventional ag did was they gave them exactly what they asked for. So as we started thinking about, well, okay, maybe we shouldn't be so cocky about it. How would we bring the cost down? We started looking straight to those guys that have the stationary houses, the conventional barns. We said, what are they doing that we could incorporate into our system? So really what this is we took the conventional stationary house and we basically just took the floor out and put it on wheels. It sounds simpler than it is, but that's really what we tried to do here, and you could speak to that too.
You basically summed it up, Paul.
We'll talk about the feed pans and the water lines and all that stuff.
So it's important to give constant access to feed, water, and shelter to the birds. So, we're taking the best of what the conventional program. Sorry, the wind's really kicking up.
Yeah, it is.
The best of what the conventional does, and then we can put the best of what pasture raising birds can do. But some of the advancement that we've gotten from the industry are definitely augered feed. So when we started, we were carrying 5-gallon buckets of feed, and now you're repeating that thousands of times, and it's never going to be as stress-free and as efficient for the birds as just running the auger. And just the sound of the auger just calls the birds. You can see them, they love to find the feed.
How do you catch them all?
So we do hand catching.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It takes about 15 minutes to clear that coop with 6 or 8 guys.
That's amazing.
And so we can catch the same way we do in a conventional barn. We can put all the skirting down, and then what we'll do is we'll try to encourage them to go to the back 2/3, and then we'll so if we were to catch from this side, that's why we have 12-foot doors so we can run forklifts in. So we'll then take them and push them into this 2/3 of the coop, and then we'll partition those into 3 different spaces so that the birds don't all end up in one spot. And then we can run the catching modules in here with a forklift, and then we can bring them in and out. And so basically the guys are going and picking up about 3 birds in either hand and then put them in a box and then off the plant.
This is moving 1 full length every 24 hours, if that makes sense. So think of it like an easy up structure, shade structure, if you will. The birds can get in and out as they want, but if you've ever kind of raised poultry or know poultry dynamics, they like to stay where their food and water and shade is all at. So even though those sides are wide open, you don't see birds running way out here. They like to stay close to their buddies and close to where they know they have food and water. But you can actually see exactly the marks of where these coop were at, 1 day ago, 2, 3. We're at about 4 days ago right here. And if you want, you guys can come over and you can see what that difference, I always find this kind of interesting. Look at kind of what the difference of the post-grazing compared to without the grazing. So you can see kind of like what the birds are consuming. And then you can see that manure load that goes down. That might look gross to some people, but to us, that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful application of manure, just right. So We work all of our stocking densities and how many birds per square foot and all that stuff off of trying to get that right manure application every single time, and then it works back to the rest period.
Well, where Paul's standing, that was where the chicken coop was 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is remediating very fast. If you go back, you can start seeing it just disappear. Yeah. And so the coop was started on the road. And if you go back to the road, it almost looks like it hasn't been there.
Yep.
And we're only in April right now.
3 days ago, it doesn't smell.
No, it doesn't smell inside.
No, you'll get a farm smell, but on this farm, how many arcs are we running right here?
14.
14 times 6,000, so that's how many birds are here on this farm, and you're not smelling it, right? I mean, you're getting a fresh air smell. It smells like a farm, but it's a fresh air smell. All of these automated range coops are equipped with thermostatic climate control. So that's something we did not have in the manual system. It was hand roll. When it got hot, we're walking around 77 coops, trying to roll them up real quick, and when it gets cold, we're trying to roll them all back down. It's a nightmare.
184 sides.
What you're seeing right here is thermostatically, those shades are dropping because the weather's getting warm. So there's a thermostat inside, and as it gets warm, that is our climate control. We don't have huge air coolers on either side or, you know, pads and all that stuff. So that basically is what we have, that in a stir fan as well. Everywhere that we raise chicken, we want to be raising cattle as well. They're like nature's lawnmower. So we can either come through, chickens don't like really tall grass, right? They like stuff that's trimmed down a little bit more. They can see the food, they can see the water. So we can either come through here and knock it all off with a mower, or we're trying to lean into the natural system. So, or we could come into these big ruminant animals. Now we use the electric fencing, this hot wire, really simple technology, but Dan can speak to it more. We're using this electric fencing to set them in one place for a short amount of time, graze the grass down, and then move the animals to another spot. That should remind you of something like the bison or the wildebeest in nature, right? So you have huge herds of animals, livestock animals. Their only protection against predators is
Herding.
Yeah, big groups, right? So they're gonna stay in a big pack, they're gonna eat the grass, they're gonna poop all over the ground, and then what do next? They gotta move, right? They've eaten all the grass, they pooped all over the ground, they're gonna move to the next spot. So all we're doing with the electric fencing, we're replicating that natural cycle. So they're on this eat, poop, and move cycle. I don't know, maybe you could speak to some of the specifics. How long do you keep them here, breeds, stuff like that?
Sure. Again, I don't want to bore people getting too detailed on it, but as Paul mentioned, it's the predator-prey relationship. We want animals to group together, and you're going to create hoof impact, you're going to create trampling, and you're going to get more beneficial utilization of the forage. Okay, and so you really want them to eat everything, but it's kind of like a kid. If you say, well, what do you want to eat? Well, I'm going to go eat ice cream. Well, that's what cows are going to do too. And so they're going to bite off what they like, and if you leave them in one spot, they're going to go to, okay, well, no more ice cream left. Well, are there any brownies? And they'll go all the way down to their vegetables. Okay, but if you can bunch them together, then there'll be a competition aspect, and they'll try to bite everything. And whether it's, you know, thistle or clover or dandelions or rye or whatever they're eating, there's different nutritional components in all of the different forages. So you really want them eating a varied diet, and it's highly beneficial for them. And when you can group them together, you're going to see a much better utilization of everything.
Yeah. So what's happening here is you're able to control them for a short amount of time and then give it a long chance to rest and recover. Something really interesting in this paddock that you can see, if you look out kind of to where the cows are over to the right, you see where there's that light green and that dark green? Anybody have any idea why it looks like that? The chicken coops are doing the same thing. So because we're in these mobile coops that move every day, they came down this strip just like that. They shut up that way. You can see where that fertilizer impact hit, right? Where that dark green grass is, right to the right of that, where that light green grass is, that's where the chickens didn't really hit. So it's this idea of animals. I mean, we all here living in the city part of the country, oh, animals are terrible, they're bad for the environment, they got all these problems. Well, I would argue that if they're managed the right way, they could be one of the best things for the environment. They could literally heal soil, they can bring things back to life, provide nutrient-dense food for people. Is much more in how we're managing them than anything else. I don't know if you...
You could look at the road we're standing on. I mean, this is sandy soil.
Yeah.
This has very low fertility, and when we got here, it didn't really want to grow anything. And after, you know, a year and a half, 2 years of producing, now all of a sudden, if you look at the surrounding area, nobody's fields are really looking like this. And give us another year or two, and it's going to be just an emerald.
And so that's one of the most exciting things to me about this concept. Not that we came up with it, right? I mean, Native Americans have been combining plants and animals for way before any of us were ever around. But it's this idea that plants feed animals and animals feed plants, and actually they work together in symbiosis really, really well. So we're trying to build out this system where we can come in with a whole bunch of chickens and we can fertilize a really dilapidated crop field, something that's been worked pretty hard. We can bring nutrition back in. I mean, we got a farm right in the back that's seen it on a hayfield. And so we're trying to build this larger scale system, not just to produce more chickens, but so we can impact more acreage and we can have this plant-animal combination that really makes sense. So the big idea is, can we come onto a row crop operation, run our birds for 3 to 5 years, really build up the fertility, potentially even transition it to organic, hand it back to that farmer, and they can go grow their crops again. We move on to the next spot. I mean, that's sort of what's in our mind. Of course, the execution on that is not that easy. It sounds really nice on paper, but it's a lot harder to actually pull off. But we're trying to think about that plant and animal integration, and what we would really say is the design, you know, that we inherited. So anything else?
No, absolutely. I mean, from a logistic perspective, feed's hard to get. So if you want to go organic, now you got to segregate feeds and different things. So we're already doing the non-GMO, and we've got a great local source for the grains. And so we're generating a market for farmers to plant something that they can actually earn more money on, and now we can process it locally.
Right now, I'm with Dan Coady at Pasturebird at their farm in Butler, Georgia, and Dan is going to show us around their what did you call
Automated range coop, or ARC for short.
Their ARC, the automated range coop, which is the biggest pastured poultry schooner I think I've ever seen, probably that ever exists. It's an amazing design. This is the guy who pretty much built it from the ground up. So Dan, thanks so much for showing us around. And where do you want to start?
It's my pleasure. Well, I mean, I guess we can start by just looking down through the aviary here. And so you're going to notice a few things. First is we can auger feed. So, I mean, that lends us to a high level of efficiency in being able to constantly give feed to the birds with minimal labor input. And you'll also notice we're running bell waters, which anybody in the pastured poultry area really is familiar with these, but these don't work well in the conventional industry because you can't keep them clean with all the litter and all the particulates in the air. And when you do clean them, you got to get rid of the wastewater. So when the industry used to use them, they'd have to bucket out the water every time. Well, we don't care. We can dump the water in the pasture, we can clean them out in production, and we don't have the particulates. So for us, open water is really a great thing. Birds drink best from open water, in my opinion. It's a pretty windy day.
Yeah, as you guys can tell, it's pretty windy out here, so bear with us. We'll do our best to edit that out, but this is such a fascinating experience. Couldn't take a
We can walk to the center. It'll be a lot calmer away from the door.
And speaking of wind, a lot of the wind is caused by what's on the sides and the roof. What can you tell me about that part of the design?
So the entire coop has to be able to contour to the ground. And if it was entirely rigid, then wheels will have to constantly be popping off the ground. So you want the whole thing to sort of be able to flex. And if you're going to have a structure that flexes like that, then you can't have a rigid roof. You know, I was asked earlier today about why can't we just use a galvalume roof? Well, the answer lies in when you screw that galvalume together, it's going to constantly fatigue. Any kind of shingling is going to be the exact same thing. And then we also have to be concerned with weight. I mean, we could put, a slate roof on this, but now we're going to be toting around, 30 ton, 40 ton of roof materials up there. So a flexible membrane allows us to have all of the benefits of the shelter and also being lightweight and very, very flexible.
And just real quick, what are the general kind of dimensions of the ARC and how many birds do you house in here?
So we've tried several different dimensions on them. Right now we're running a 50-foot by 150-foot structure. And the way we came up with that is For our purposes, we need to utilize more square foot per bird than a normal confinement operation would. So we're running about 1.25 to 1.3 square feet per bird, whereas in a house, I mean, you could be all the way down to like 0.65 square foot per bird. But in the summertime, the birds are going to want to hug your north wall because then they're going to get out of the sunlight and the heat generated on the south side. But in the wintertime, they're going to want to be in the sunlight where it's warm, and they're going to want to stay off your north wall. So you're going to see a little bit of natural migration even throughout the day so the birds can kind of seek their comfort zone. So if you've got them packed in where they can't do that, then you're going to leave birds higher stress. It's just not really the program we were designing. So this allowed everybody to go sort of where they wanted to when they want to go there. And also when you're moving a structure this size, you've got to allow the birds to be able to move in there. And so if you had them packed in at 0.65 square foot per bird, moving that would be really arduous.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly seem to have plenty of room. Doesn't seem to be a problem at all. So talking about moving them, what is the trick to moving this behemoth of an ark?
Slowly. And so, I mean, we could move it so slow that it could take, hours, if not all day long. But broilers, and again, these are still things we're researching and looking into, but my current understanding of it is if you were to mark a bird, or let's just say you mark 20 or 30 birds, you're going to notice that those 20 or 30 birds really localized to an area. They don't go, oh, I'm going to go for a walk today and then go someplace else in the coop. They're going to reside almost their entire life in a section of a coop. So if you move very, very slowly, then your leading edge is always clean ground and your trailing edge is always dirty ground. So you have non-uniformity in the conditions you're providing. So what we try to do is move the coop at about 1/10 of a mile an hour. And so we get the entire move done in about 5 minutes. And that way you go from all in one style or all of one, dirty coop, if you will, all to clean ground, all in a single shot. And we choose, about 1/10 of a mile an hour because a bird, if we look at the birds, so not running, but just a normal walk when the birds are moving around, that's about 1/3 of a mile an hour. Okay, now they can obviously go a mile an hour. I mean, they can go a lot faster and run, but they won't sustain that very long. So a comfortable walk at 1/3 of a mile an hour means that the bird can stay ahead of the coop. But we don't move the coop at 1/3 of a mile an hour. We move about 1/10 of a mile an hour so that the skirt or the coop can sort of bump into the bird. They can feel and go, oh, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to get out of the way. And then they can sit back down and they can do that repetitively if they choose, or they can just move out of the way.
Awesome. And then as far as are you guys hooking up tractors to pull this thing? Are you getting out and pushing it by hand? What are you doing to move it?
Well, the coop actually moves itself. It's a fully autonomous, structure on drive wheels. So we've got a combination of caster or idler wheels that can swivel and go in any direction. And then we've also have drive wheels that we can rotate and lock into whatever direction that we want. So the coop in production is always moving sideways, if you will. That way you're going to take a 150-foot wide column of birds and then move them 50 feet. And that's so much easier on the birds than taking a 50-foot wide column and then making them go 150 feet. So moving against the aspect ratio makes the most sense for production. And in order to be able to navigate where we want, we've got two different mechanisms. We can change the orientation on the wheels so that I can make it move at a 45-degree angle. I can make it move on the ridge line. I can go forward and reverse. So I've got sort of an easy 8-way direction on the coop. And then I can also modulate rotational velocity on the wheels. So if I move that those wheels at that half faster than here, you're going to get a slow tilting, and now you can slowly adjust your path as you're moving. So this is how we control the entire coop. And so in the conventional industry, we use what are called house controllers, and they'll run all of your ventilation systems, all your water meters, all your augers for your feed lines. Basically everything that's happening in the barn is done through your house controller. Well, those house controllers do everything that we need except for one integral part, and that's control the drive system. So originally we had to buy our house controller, and then we had to build our own PLC to run the drive system. But our PLC had all the bandwidth in the world to run everything. So what we did is we came up with our own proprietary program, and now we do everything that the house controller does. So now you're at the home screen, so you can see, your temperature. You can see where your feed is at. You can see the total mortality in the house. You can see basically an overview of where you're at. We can also go, and now we can go to the drive system. And now this is going to show every motor in the house, and we can have an automatic control so that if we just hit the button, it'll light them all up. So negative means reverse, positive means forward. And then you just hit stop and it'll stop. We're not throwing the brakes off, so she's not going to go anywhere. But we can also put it into manual control, and now I can say I want that wheel to spin by itself, or I want these wheels to spin faster than these wheels, and now we can start changing the orientation. We can also show all the different population statistics. We can show all of our water statistics. We can show feed statistics, where our augers, what sensors are hitting in there, and then also our climate. We can then control our curtains, all of our store fans, exhaust fans, and then the status of everything. So it's basically everything that the house controller would do, and then we get essentially all of that information at a glance from our home screen.
It's amazing, man. It's like a smart, like they have like smart homes and smart thermostats, and this is your smart schooner.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's pretty awesome. So a lot of automation going on to increase efficiencies and just make the work happen. We were just sitting here, and I noticed that the feed auger seemed to be automating itself. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct, and that's very standard in feed delivery. Is there's a paddle switch or a contactor, if you will, that senses if the control pan has feed. And so you make the control pan the most obvious for the birds to eat out of, and once the control pan runs low on feed, it'll trip the auger to refill. And since the control pan is as far away from the feed source as can be, every pan has to be filled by the time the control pan's filled.
Very cool. And I'll show on the screen here in just a second, I'll show the augers that you guys have outside, because that's where I guess you guys are loading the feed up. How often do you have to fill those up? Or your grain silos that are attached
I
to
like
augers?
to fill them 3 times a flock. And so we've got about 12,000 pounds of capacity in the 2 grain bins that service this coop. And so the first fill up, when you start with a bird that's say 18 to 20 days, that 12,000 pounds of feed for this coop will last, roughly 11 to 13 days. And then we can then fill it up a second time, and that's going to go about a week. And then we can fill it up a third time, and that's going to go about 3 to 4 days. And so obviously the bigger the birds get, the more feed that they eat, and that system is about the most efficient you can. Now that said, depending on what weather conditions are looking like, if you're going to get a ton of rain, the last thing you want to do is just bury 8 wheels with 12,000 pounds. So we can light fill or allow them to run, just because it's good on your infrastructure. But these new designs, basically, if your 4-wheel drive truck can get there, this coop is going to get there.
That's pretty incredible. And I noticed something else that's different than the schooners that we use at Heifer Ranch are, you have open air sides. Like the chickens can come and go as they please, which is pretty awesome. Have you guys always done it that way, or is that new to this design?
Well, I've always been a fan of day range models. I think that I think it's nice that birds can sort of migrate and go as they please, but at the end of the day, they're always going to stay where there's shelter. So they like being in the shade, they like the feed, they like the water, and so you can see that they can go anywhere, but they like a little bit of sun, especially on a windy day. because I think we're probably upper 60s, low 70s today. But when you go to harvest the birds, or when it is really cold, you want to be able to give them as much shelter as possible. So we can certainly drop the sides, and that makes for a more efficient catch. And we can also, drop them just to give them, better protection from the elements. But by and large, it gives them more square footage, and it also gets us away from any arguments. Well, yeah, it's on grass, but you're still confinement. Well, we're not confining them. I mean, even when we have it all closed, I like to leave the corners up, because it's almost impossible to completely seal a skirting to undulating ground. And because of that, if there's any little light gap, birds love to shoot that gap. They'll go through it, but the light's not coming from the inside, so there's no way for them to know how to find that again. So if you get birds out that can't get back in, now you're not giving the bird what it needs anymore. So we generally try to leave sort of the corners open so that anybody that does get out finds their way back in.
Yeah, I think it definitely puts that argument to rest of whether this is confinement or not. I mean, they totally have the choice to go outside if they choose to at any time. They have plenty of room in here, and that's pretty awesome. I know our audience is going to want to know, seeing these sides open like this, we always get questions about predators and predator issues. Do you have any of those here in this area of Georgia where we're at, which is, just for our audience's reference, about an hour and a half south of Atlanta? Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, maybe closer to 2 hours from where we're at here, but we're not too far. I'm always going to refer to what Will Harris at White Oak always said. It's kind of like tithing to nature. So you're going to lose a certain amount to predation, but we're also going to lose a certain amount to just ineptitude in counting. So most people are going to forget to count a bird more often than they're going to double count a bird. So it's almost directional in error. We're going to always have less birds than we think, because you culled a bird or you picked up mortality. If that didn't get logged correctly, then that's creating that shrink. And so if that's happening, and then you lose, say, 5 birds in a flock out of 6,000 birds, you really don't know where that's coming from. Now, if we were losing hundreds of birds to predation, then obviously we'd have to deal with that, but really we don't see it. And we don't see that for a few reasons. First, the coop's always moving. So all your sharp-toothed predators, they really are leery of that. Things like skunks, possums, they're not really leery at all, but we don't have any issues with them. And we also have dogs. So we have my dog that's always running around here.
Say Ranger here, he's keeping them at bay, aren't you, buddy?
Yeah, it's okay, pup. And so we're also getting more guardian dogs. The longer we have production here, I think the more we're going to see challenging coming. But right now, our loss to predation is still in that shrink volume where it's you're trying to fix a problem that you can't even quantify.
Yeah. And you mentioned it's 72 degrees, beautiful day, but you guys are doing something a little different in pasture culture. You're growing year round, is that right?
That's correct.
And what is that like, and what do you do in the extremes of the temperatures to kind of take care of the birds while they're out here?
It's back to basics. It's the simple things. And I get the comment from a lot of conventional growers, yeah, that's how we did it 60 years ago. And that's essentially the truth of it. So, you go back 60 years and they weren't running tunnel ventilated houses, they were running open aired, curtain sided houses and stir fans.
Thank you again, Dan, for showing us around here at Pasturebird in Butler, Georgia. Thank you guys for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't seen any of our content before, and if you want to see more robotic pastured poultry schooners like this, we've got some more content actually coming up on our channel down the road that I can't go into too many details about, but this is the future of pastured poultry, and we're going to continue to cover it. So subscribe to the channel. Thank you again, sir, so much. Really appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Take care, you guys.
Want to tour another regenerative farm? Join Christine Hernandez for an in-depth look at multi-species livestock management right here at Heifer Ranch. Or grab your notebook and learn practical business advice for running a profitable farm. APA board member Joe Koopson shares how he scaled his chicken farm successfully and sustainably in this video.